Hey, Zach, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
We're just going to give it a few more minutes to let everyone filter in.
Sure.
Hey, John, thanks for joining. We're just, hello. Yeah. Hey, John, thanks for joining. We're just waiting for people to filter in.
Great, thank you.
Hey, I just want to check you can hear me okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, good. Last night when I had joined another meeting, I don't know, my speaker was coming from somewhere weird. I don't know. So, all right, thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Carrie. We're just going to give, let's say, 3 more minutes to let other people filter in, and then we'll get started. Hey, Cole, thanks for joining. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes for people to join.
Okay, sounds good.
I know Andrew won't be able to join tonight. It's all hands on deck with the transportation committee, given that it's budget season, but a lot of the other folks did RSVP, yes, so we'll see. Okay, it's 8:05, so let's get started. I believe we have Zach and John with DDOT, and they're going to present about the H Street Northeast Bus Priority Project. So I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. Let me get my screen shared. I have, oops, let me try that again, sorry. A quick presentation. Okay, great, let me start my video here. Thank you for having us tonight. I really appreciate you saving some time on your agenda. My name is Zach Gambetti Mendez. I am the project manager for the H Street Northeast Bus Priority Project. Also joining me tonight is John Finnerty. He's the deputy PM for the project. And so as this project moves forward, you'll have 2 points of contact in case one of us is on vacation or, whatever the case may be. You can reach out to both of us and we'll both be super involved. So yeah, with that, I'll just kind of jump in. There we go. So I'll cover the bus priority program pretty briefly, but just want to make sure that folks are aware, since this is a pretty new program for the district. Then move into H Street Northeast. This is kind of project kickoff phase, so we just want to make sure that folks know that the project is here, it's coming, what our potential timeline or what our projected timeline is going to be. But we don't have anything kind of figured out quite yet. And we'll share with you ways that the community can start giving us feedback on this project. So the bus priority program is kind of, the bus priority plan and the bus priority program kind of came together at the same time. I think the program actually may have kind of come together a little bit before the plan. But essentially the plan calls for improving bus speeds and reliability for riders, across the district, all 8 wards. Providing better access, more access to jobs and opportunity. The bus priority plan also talks about an equitable recovery from COVID. We know that during the pandemic, the public health emergency, more folks were actually riding the Metro bus system than the Metro rail system. And so really kind of showing us that the Metro buses are really the backbone of our transit system here in the district. And of course, we want to improve bus speed and reliability, sorry. But we also want to look at the entire rider experience, right? So how folks are getting to the buses, is that safe, is that comfortable? Can people actually access those stops? Is there shelters there? Is there, amenities that folks need, and things like that. So looking at bus speeds, but then also just the whole rider experience. As well as pedestrian safety, right? That kind of falls in there too. Not just can you actually get to the stop, but can you get to the stop safely, right? Also kind of coupled in there is Move DC, that was also released in December of 2021. They talk about very similar things, right? They're kind of, they work together. Talks about investing in the transit priority network, which I'll show in just a minute here. Talks about bus priority, talks about safer streets, all of which we're kind of accomplishing through the bus priority program. And so here's the transit priority network, or the bus priority network that I just talked about on our last slide. The map shows all of our bus priority corridors in blue. It's also highlighting where we have existing bus lanes throughout the district. So really covering a wide swath of the district. I mean, really all 8 wards. Over 70 miles of corridors are considered our bus priority corridors. And you can see on I won't read all the numbers specifically, but we touch a lot of Metrobus routes, a lot of circulator routes, a lot of where folks live in the district, as well as a lot of where our jobs are. So that's why it's super critical for us to work on improving these bus corridors to make transit more reliable in the district. And when I say transit, I really mean buses here, right? We're looking at the bus network through this project. But then, of course, on H Street, the bus could also, improvements for the bus should also help the streetcar as well, since we know that the streetcar is on H Street. And so you can see there the portion of H Street I just highlighted on the map. And one thing that I want to know,
just one question so that I understand this correctly.
Yeah.
So the bus priority corridors are what's existing in the plan now, and this is what the projects are targeting going forward. And the future growth corridors will be added to the plan in the future. Will be worked on. I'm not sure I quite understand the breakdown.
To be perfectly honest with you, I am not totally understanding what the future growth corridors are either. So the bus priority corridors are part of our 51 projects that we are delivering over the next several years. The future growth corridors, I mean, I know, for example, like Bladensburg will be, that's shown as a future growth corridor, but there's like a mobility and safety project that's coming along that will kind of latch onto and make improvements through that project. So I'm not sure if there's like a set defined like structure for these. I think sometimes they're looped in with other projects, like Bladensburg will be. I'm not sure about this corridor or these. I can kind of follow up with you. I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to that.
That's okay. I think that answers my question. Just that I was wondering if almost from how it was phrased that like the bus priority corridors were already implemented, and then what are we meeting about? And then but no, it's okay. Now I kind of understand. It's like this is the plan targets, and these are the potential future. Okay.
Yes. Sorry. And then one thing I just want to highlight kind of as we move forward is that we're breaking down these corridors, right? There's a lot of corridors on here, several mile stretches, right? 16th Street goes many miles, as does, Georgia, H Street Benning, right? So what we're doing is we're breaking these corridors into smaller segments that are about 1 to 2 miles in length. And what that does is it allows DDOT to make improvements more quickly and, across all corridors and all 8 wards. And so, I think many of you may be familiar with projects in the district that have taken on whole corridors at a time and taken like a decade to deliver. We're trying to move a lot more quickly with these projects. And so by breaking them up into smaller sections, we're able to kind of bring them through kind of the DDOT pipeline, if you will, through planning, design, and then construction in a quicker manner. And so just an example of H Street specifically, there's a section of H Street Northwest from North Cap over to 13th Street Northwest that's currently in design. It may be going to construction this year, I believe. And so that's a project that's already moving. We're looking at the next section from North Cap over to Benning Road, and then future scopes along Benning Road. Benning Road is it's not tricky, but I don't know exactly how we're going to look at Benning Road in the future. I think as they expand the streetcar east of where it currently is, we'll probably work pretty closely with the streetcar team to make sure that bus priority improvements are part of that project. And then maybe tackle like the section in between of Benning separately. I don't know exactly how that's going to look, but it will be kind of segmented as we go along, and we'll really work on working with other projects like the streetcar extension to get improvements elsewhere. And how we get, or what we kind of identify as improvements come out of our bus priority toolbox. There's just a couple examples here on the screen. It's a toolbox of over 20 treatments. I can share the link with you. It's on our bus priority web page on the DDOT website. But essentially it has a wide array of tools that we can utilize And we utilize them based on the data that we're seeing, the kind of delay that we're seeing, what issues the bus is coming up against. So it's not kind of a one size fits all across the district. We kind of have all these treatments that we can kind of pull from as needed based on what we're seeing on specific corridors. And again, I can send out that toolbox if anyone's interested in looking at that, or maybe John can post the link to that in the chat. So H Street Northeast, this is a bit of a needs assessment kind of slides. You all live very close to this area, so I think that you will know a lot of this information, but just kind of setting the stage for this project. But first, kind of, setting the project limits. Again, we're looking at North Capitol over to Benning Road. A couple things to note is that H Street Northwest Bus Priority Project that I had mentioned, kind of coming, west from North Capitol Street. And then the H Street Bridge Replacement Project. I'm sure many of you may be familiar with this project, but basically the Hopscotch Bridge will be deconstructed and reconstructed over the course of like 5 years, I believe it is the time frame for that. And so, we may not be able to really touch the bridge area right now where they kind of work on that larger project, but we'll definitely work on North Cap and then third to Benning, and then see what we can do with the bridge kind of once the major construction is over with. But we're not going to hold back the rest of H Street to wait for the bridge to be reconstructed, because we'd be waiting till like 2030 or something. It has a pretty long time frame to get that rebuilt. And again, right, the purpose of this is to increase bus speeds and reliability, and then of course improve safety, especially for pedestrians. So a quick needs assessment. Again, you all live close to this corridor. You may know some of this information already, but the H Street Benning Road line, WMATA line, which is the combination of the X2 and the X9, is the second busiest line in the entire WMATA Metro bus system. The streetcar adds even more folks to that, but doesn't push it up to the #1 spot, but second busiest in the entire Metro region WMATA bus system. So moving a lot of people along this corridor. The X2 by itself is the second busiest Metro bus route, and it has been since 2018, remained #2 throughout the pandemic, so still moving a lot of folks. And actually prior to 2018, it was actually the busiest Metro bus route. So moving a lot of people, got bumped out by Route 70 in 2018. So I don't know, still moving a lot of people, second busiest in the network. Of course, the streetcar runs along this this corridor as well. It's kind of in this offset lane, right? Not a curbside lane, which would be up against the curb, but kind of in that offset lane in mixed traffic. And of course, we're looking at an expansion over to Benning Road Station. This picture on the top, it's kind of hard to tell just from a photo, but this car was just sitting here with its hazards on. I'm sure that you see this all the time, but that's really that can be really impactful if they don't move, or if someone just ran into the store really quick and there's physically no one in that car. To the streetcar, and especially as we're talking about the streetcar, making sure that it runs efficient service is important now. So this is already problematic, but then especially as we start expanding that streetcar further east, we really want to make sure that there's nothing kind of holding up the system, because then it's just a wider kind of ripple effect across an even bigger system. So already a problem, and we want to make sure that as the system grows, we're making sure that it's running as efficiently as it can. Additionally, H Street Northeast is a Vision Zero high injury corridor. And so, this is one of our top crash corridors in the district. We know that there's been several high profile crashes, some pretty tragic crashes along this corridor. And so as part of this project, we'll be looking at ways that we can, in the near term, kind of help improve that situation. And then, of course, as I mentioned, high passenger volumes, second busiest route and line in the entire Metro bus system, and then slow travel speeds, which we can look at here. And so this is the average operating speed of the X2 bus. The green line is eastbound buses, the blue line is westbound buses, and then the yellow line is what a free flow speed. So if the bus wasn't needing to kind of stop or stuck in traffic or things like that, the free flow speed is taken, I think, between like midnight and 5 a.m. So kind of when there's kind of free flowing traffic and minimal kind of pickups. So one thing that I want to mention is one thing that I want to remind you of is that the blue and the green lines are averages. So that's why they don't actually touch that free flow speed. There are, a lot of buses meet that free flow speed, especially in like the late night and early morning hours. But when you're averaging all the trips on a very frequent route across an entire month, it kind of brings it down a little bit. So that's why those lines aren't touching free flow. But really what we should look at here is trends. And what we see is, that westbound bus, especially once we hit that morning rush hour, really gets slowed down and really stays slowed down really throughout the evening until kind of we're starting to get into the nighttime. The eastbound bus is kind of interesting. It doesn't dip as quickly, but kind of does a slow and steady decline throughout the entire day, really, until it kind of bottoms out in that PM peak period or approaching that PM peak period. And then again, slightly recovers, but doesn't really get back, to good speed until we're kind of in those nighttime hours again. So, just kind of starting to pull together some data showing the buses are moving pretty slowly along this corridor, reminding you all that, speed for buses is not the same thing as, speed for cars, right? We know that folks can probably go 60 miles an hour on H Street, and that's a problem. But the bus is going 8 miles an hour. We're not talking about getting them up to 60. We're talking about getting them up to 14, 12 even, just a more comfortable, reliable speed for folks along the corridor. Again, you all live near H Street, you know this very well, but I just kind of want to show what our existing conditions are. H Street is pretty uniform throughout, so we're kind of looking at this cross section throughout the whole street. Gets a little trickier once you get to the starburst, but just there's a curb lane in each direction that has a lot of metered street parking in many cases, some loading zones. There's a Pudo somewhere. I think there's like a valet zone closer to the starburst area. So, curbside lanes in either direction. The streetcar lane, which is also a general purpose lane. So cars, of course, can use that lane as well. And then 2 general purpose lanes in the middle. And why I like to show this is because, there's a lot of calls for bus lanes on H Street Northeast. And so just kind of want to highlight some of the limitations that we have if we start talking about bus lanes. They wouldn't be able to be curb running because we have this of course is just paint and post, but in many intersections along the corridor, this is like a built out concrete curb extension that actually has like a streetcar stop on it. And so curbside transit only lanes wouldn't be an option on this corridor. We'd be talking about taking a general purpose lane of traffic. Right, it makes the most sense to probably take the one that has a streetcar in it, and then that would leave a lane of general purpose traffic. So again, there's no proposals on the table yet, but I know that's a call coming from several ANCs. I think there's like a petition. Several businesses have signed on to a letter that basically calls for that. So just kind of letting folks know the current layout of the street and kind of what we would be looking at if we start talking about that. And I do think that is a potential tool. Again, these are potential tools. Nothing is being proposed here, but just, based on some of the data that we're seeing, based on what the initial feedback that we're starting to get looks like, I think bus lanes could be a good potential tool for this corridor, as well as bulb outs and curb extensions. So bringing, the bus stop out to the travel lane so the bus doesn't have to weave in and out of traffic. And also, when we're talking about H Street, the X2 runs the long articulated 60-foot buses. And when folks are parked illegally too close to the bus stop, it limits limits access for the buses to get over to that bus stop, which can create some serious issues with ADA, right? If they can't deploy a ramp if they're in the middle of the street. And so it can cause some serious issues. And so, and it can also slow down the bus. And so, bringing folks out to the bus stops in the lane and just keeps going. I think that's a potential tool that would work really well. And a lot of the bus drivers, there are some of these already on the corridor, and the bus drivers find that they work really well. And then another potential tool, again, this is not a final list or anything, but just potential tools, is some transit signal priority. So essentially the bus is able to communicate with the streetlights coming up, and it's able to extend a green for a couple of seconds so the bus can get through to its bus stop, or other small modifications to the signal timing to allow the bus to move a little bit more freely. So again, some tools that are starting to kind of bubble to the top that would be, potential tools for H Street. I do want to remind everyone that curbside management and pedestrian safety are absolutely part of this project. So we talk a lot about the buses and the speed and reliability, but we'll also be touching on these two elements as well. And so curbside management, do we need more loading zones? Do we need more PUDOs? Is it working okay now? Things like that we'll be looking at, as well as pedestrian safety. Mostly as part of these projects, some quick implementation, paint and post type things. Here we're looking at like paint and post to help create some daylighting. And so cars can see pedestrians and things like that is what we'll mostly be looking at. Here's our projected timeline. Currently in spring, we're in kickoff mode, pulling together needs assessment. What I presented today is kind of a baseline of our data. We continue to pull more and dive into more data. We've been interviewing operators who operate the X2 and the X9 to kind of get, they're up and down these corridors every single day. So they've provided some great insight for us. And so very much in kickoff mode. We're also starting community engagement. So I'll get to that in just a second here. But hoping that as we get into the summer timeframe, we can start looking at concepts. So, the potential tools I told you about a few minutes ago, start putting those onto paper, start looking at what they look like on H Street and getting the community's input on those potential concepts. I have late summer, early fall. I think fall is more kind of the timeline here. Hopefully we'll be landing on a preferred alternative concept that then we can move over to our design team to get designed and then ready for construction in the next construction season in 2024. So that's our timeline. And if, we are looking for community feedback as we start kicking off this project. We have a couple ways that folks can give us feedback. We have a kind of a standardized feedback form. A lot of folks have already been filling that out for H Street, so I think it's been shared. Maybe you've seen it already. We have a bus priority inbox that you can send emails to if you have more to say than the form, then you can type into the form or whatever the case may be, or you just prefer that method. Or you can also call and leave us a message. It's kind of like a hotline type situation. Or not maybe hotline's not the right word, but you can call and leave your comments. And so this is great if we have folks who maybe aren't super good with email or the feedback forms, or just maybe don't have internet access or things like that. We'll throw all of these into the chat so you have access to them. Obviously, right, this is like hyperlinked, so I don't expect you to be able to click it, but we'll throw it into the chat as well as John's and my emails. You can always reach out to either one of us with any questions or comments that you have. We're happy to take those, and I'm happy to take any questions. That's the end of my presentation.
Sure. I have a couple questions. First of all, thanks for presenting. This is a really exciting project. My first question is just why such a long timeline? It sounds like there's a limited set of tools. It's a well-known street with well-known problems. The problems are there, the solution options are there, and it's a pretty limited set. The feedback is already getting started. The momentum's already there. I know that other RANC and others have been calling for these improvements for a while. Why was it going to take 2 years to start, just to break ground?
Yeah, so there's a couple things here. We need to move the concepts through our engineering team. Full disclosure, there's already some like heartburn in conversations that we're having, not on our side, but just in, just there's some heartburn with reducing it to one lane. If we were to do the bus lanes, which I think is a concept that we're looking at. And so, we need to kind of work through that with them. And I think, the bridge construction, the Hopscotch Bridge construction, will have H Street down to one lane in each direction for like 5 years. And so I think we're going to really kind of use that as like a, there's already going to be a pinch point. And so it's, kind of using that. So we just kind of have to like work through that with our engineers. And then there's kind of a bottleneck as projects move into design. And so, our design team is working on a lot of projects. They don't just do bus priority. And so it just kind of has to like go into their queue. And so, that's why we're taking smaller sections, and they're kind of staggered to kind of allow things to kind of shuffle through the design team. And then, you know, by the time they get their design, we'll probably be kind of closing out the construction season, and so we will have to wait until the, you know, the spring of 24. So that's kind of the why the timeline. You know, I know folks have brought up that other projects have moved really quickly, especially during the pandemic. There was a lot of like higher level direction to just kind of, you know, not, you know, in many cases, right, especially during the pandemic, kind of not do our full community outreach like we usually do on these projects and just kind of put something in and test it. That is not kind of present here. And so we're just kind of working through our regular process, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I get it. It's just, you know, you mentioned how we're doing this in segments so that to speed the process up instead of one corridor in 10 years, but between 8th Street Northwest, 8th Street Northeast, and Benning Road on this side of the river and across the river, you know, it's probably going to be 10 years before all that is done. So it'll come in bits and pieces, but the whole thing is still going to take 10 years at this rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just one other question. You know, I mean, we all know that one big problem with the streetcar is that it just gets blocked by double parked cars. It's a huge problem. I see it literally every single time I'm on H Street. And I love the idea of a bus priority lane. But I worry about that still being an issue unless we remove curbside parking. Is that an option that's on the table to at least some degree?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, we're looking at the curbside management, and so like everything's on the table as part of that, right? So, I mean, I know some of the, well, I think some of the, I'm getting all of the, there's a lot of community interest, right? So you mentioned that. So I'm getting like all of them confused, but I think they all call for wider sidewalks in many places. And so we will be having those discussions of like, do we need all the parking here, or can we extend the sidewalk? Should there be loading zones instead of parking? Should there be more PUDOs instead of parking? All of those different options, and probably many more that I'm blanking on at the moment, are on the table as part of looking at the curbside management. Because yes, agreed, right? If there were more, maybe if there were more PUDOs, people would not be double parked. Maybe, right? People would probably still, but sorry, that's like a long way to say yes. You know, we're kind of looking at everything, especially as part of that curbside management portion of this project, because it definitely does impact the transit only lane, the streetcar lane, things like that.
All right, thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Okay.
Hi, Zach. This is Carrie. Thank you for the presentation. I have a little question, which is, what is a PUDO? And then I have a bigger question is, it's a H Street and Benning is just like a high traffic corridor. Beyond this bus priority project, which I love, you know, is there anything bigger going on with kind of like traffic calming or, you know, kind of like reducing congestion along that corridor?
So first question, PUDO is pickup drop off zone. Sorry, it's basically this guy. I think there's like one on the corridor now. There's one in our database, and I had seen it at some point, but the last time I was out on the corridor, I didn't see the sign for it. So maybe it's gone away. I don't know. But this is basically like a short term, you know, someone can hop into the restaurant, pick up their food, or, you know, the food they're delivering, and hop back out and keep moving. Second question, I mean, I guess like the quick answer is no. I mean, as part of this project, we'll be looking at pedestrian safety, and part of pedestrian safety would be traffic calming. I don't know, you know, exactly what like specific kind of tools you might be interested in, but, you know, we will be looking at some of that as part of this project. And then again, you know, with the H Street bridge reconstruction over Union Station, there's gonna have to be some traffic kind of mitigation as part of that, or vehicles are just gonna have to find other ways. I don't think all the vehicles that currently use H Street are gonna use H Street and then end up at a barrier and all use, you know, Third to get around the bridge construction. So There will need to be some disbursement of cars or switching of modes potentially, which would be great if we have, some improvements to the bus service here. Just like because the road will be blocked for a significant amount of time over Union Station, the railroad tracks there. So like indirectly maybe as well, part of that project.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Sure. I always hope that as we improve the public transit, that it just, organically shifts people away from cars and into public transit. And just in terms of the timeline, like if there's any possibility to add things like, like the pedestrian safety with what you say, the patent posts, which, wouldn't necessarily have to do with the bus priority, but just be like a safety measure for pedestrians, straight away. Like I'd love to see that prioritized if that's possible.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you so much.
And Carrie, you reminded me of another question. I'm just wondering, because there's a lot of stuff going on here, like y'all have said. There's the streetcar extension, there's the Hopscotch replacement, and then there also is the Bladensburg Road study, and then the 17th and 19th Street protected bike lanes. Is there, especially with maybe the streetcar extension and the Hopscotch replacement, is there going to be any sort of deliberate effort to coordinate So for example, if we have, a bus lane on H Street from 3rd Street to the Starburst, are we then going to have a protected bus lane, where the streetcar is extended on Benning Road?
I guess, so we are coordinating with these other projects, but in terms of like, would we extend a bus lane? It kind of depends, honestly, on what the buses are experiencing in those other sections of the corridor. And so, what the right tool is. We've been talking to a lot of, we actually talked to a lot of operators today, like all day we were talking to operators for multiple projects that we're working on. And a lot of them say that once they hit the starburst, once they get through the starburst, they're like, oh, it's clear sailing. And, I think we could probably like dive into that a little bit more with them. It's probably not totally clear, like all the way, but, so like maybe in that case, if that's true, at least until, I don't know, the river or something, then we may not do bus lanes. Maybe it still makes sense. It would just kind of need to be evaluated as part of that project and what the operators are seeing, what the data is showing, and all that kind of stuff. So, we will coordinate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there might be bus lanes across the entire H Street Benning Road corridor. Or maybe there will. It just kind of depends.
Thanks.
Yeah. I do know there are bus lanes as part of the H Street Northwest project. But I'm not certain if they go the entire distance. They might. I should probably have looked at the plans before I came here. But I mean, there are bus lanes there. I do know that. I don't know if they're like the full length or if they're kind of like where they need to be to get buses through a particular tricky point, and then kind of drop off at certain points. But yeah, I do know there are some as part of that project.
Great, thanks.
I mean, to echo the others, thank you for presenting. I think this is super exciting, and obviously would love to see faster, and let us know what you need kind of from us, and also would love to see any of the improvements help with the streetcar too, because similar to Steven, every time I'm down there, someone's just in their store for 5 to 7 minutes, and it's a battle of wills with the honking and everything else just going on. So is there anything, is it just you're collecting feedback? I don't know. I assume that there's a resolution before the ANC commission, or what are you looking for from us?
Yeah. Yes, feedback. And then I believe, I don't know, you may have to remind me if you've already done a resolution calling for bus lanes, wider sidewalks, and safer crossings. I know several ANCs in the area have. I don't have them memorized off the top of my head, but I think if you wanted to do that, if you haven't already, that might be helpful as we're kind of pushing this project forward, or not pushing the project, like that sounds like we're trying to push it through, but you know, as we move this project forward, that could be helpful. But then I know sometimes it's more helpful, you know, if you want to kind of like wait and do a resolution to like support whatever we come up with, you know, assuming that's the case. So I think really that was like, again, another long-winded answer just to say, looking for feedback, and then I can check to see most of the ANCs in the area have done resolutions already. There's a lot of, we've already, you know, we're definitely hearing the calls. We're getting a lot of feedback already for this corridor. And so, you know, hopefully we can just start getting into concept development here pretty soon. There's already been a ton of feedback, but the more you give, the better, because then we have even more behind us as we move forward. And people want to say that, you know, there's too many cars for a bus lane and we need both lanes of traffic. You know, we can really push back and say, we have all these comments saying that they, you know, the community wants this and things like that. So did that answer your question? Sorry.
No, it does. It does. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm throwing all the links into the chat right now. We do have a web page. This presentation will be posted there. I just sent it off today to like the web folks who put everything on there. There's not much on there yet, but as we really get moving into the project, it'll have more and more information. The feedback form, the phone number that I mentioned earlier, and then all of our emails, including the general bus priority inbox. Put that in there now.
Okay, well, thanks again, Zach and John, for meeting with us. This is a really exciting project. And we will confer as a committee, and I'll work with the ANC to make sure that we get you whatever you need to make this project happen.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate getting some time on your agenda. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, Cole, Carrie, should we keep going through our agenda?
Yep.
We should be done by 9 o'clock. Yeah, we're not going to go over. Just a quick update. At our April meeting, we passed a resolution supporting recent legislation. We've been doing a lot of that recently, and I feel like it's been because the council has been introducing a lot of good resolutions. But this one was for the Safer Intersections Amendment Act, which that's the one that allows the Idaho stop for bicyclists and bans right turn on red throughout just about every intersection in the district. Also the Upgrading Tactical Safety Projects Amendment Act of 2022, which pretty much provides a mandate for DDOT to replace paint and flex post bulb outs and other protections with actual concrete. And then last, the Prioritizing People in Planning Amendment Act of 2022, which I found particularly exciting. It requires DDOT to no longer use the vehicle level of service measurement in deciding on safety measures, and instead develop a new level of service measurement that accounts for all road users. So we passed that and we sent it off to the council last week, and I believe they have a hearing on those on May 4th, sometime in May. I will double check. So there's that. And then the Bladensburg study still going on. We had our first community advisory committee meeting on March 30th. It sounds like we're going to have 4 or 5 throughout the year. And, you know, our goal will be to help, you know, basically shape what the road looks like, or what the corridor looks like. Public comment closes on April 23rd. There's already been a lot of great comments and some really insightful stuff just from what I've seen on the website. And really, I think the hope is that by the end of the year, there will be a final design, which can then be funded and built hopefully next year, or at least in the near future. Yeah, any questions or anything?
No, I mean, I think that all sounds strong.
Mhm.
Yeah, sounds fantastic.
Hmm.
Really glad to hear that just these things are moving, and I hope the council, I guess what would be would the council like just confer and vote on it, or what would be the next steps?
For the
The initial parts that you mentioned.
for Bladensburg.
Uh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is a DDOT project. So I don't think the council actually has to vote on anything. This is just sort of this is the same process that DDOT does for, implementing major road changes, like the H Street study tonight. Um, it's just that for Bladensburg, I think the process is a little different, mostly because it's 70% federally funded. So that because of that, there are certain requirements, like the Community Advisory Committee, which is made up of ANC 5D, ANC 5C, and reps from the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Multimodal Committee, and the Bicycle Advisory Committee. So I think that's why it's taking a little bit of a different shape, but also because it's just such a huge project, like Zach mentioned, while the H Street bus priority project is just from 3rd Street to 15th, Bladensburg is the whole 2.5 miles from the Starburst to the Maryland line. But at the end, when it all boils down, it's still the same DDOT process. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have a design. And then there might be some public community feedback again to, further sharpen the design. And then it's just a matter of getting it funded in the budget and then getting it built.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. So I guess the council will consider the resolution.
They
Good.
will. Yeah.
Okay.
When they do the hearing for the markup, that's, just one of the things that they look at.
Okay.
But,
Great.
it is a way for us to get our formal voice, not at the hearing, but in writing.
Yeah. Did you hear any feedback from, I guess, like residents around ANC 5D about the resolutions that were proposed?
I think, well, for the tactical upgrades one, I think that's uncontroversial. Everyone would prefer to have the nice looking concrete bulb outs instead of the paint and plastic. The prioritizing people one, not a lot of feedback, just because I think level of service is such a in the weeds issue that people don't really think about it. The really controversial one was the one that allows the Idaho stop and bans right turn on red. Some people wanted to maintain right turn on red, and then a lot of people really did not like the idea of legalizing the Idaho stop. In fact, we had a bit of a fight about that resolution, about that part of it behind the scenes, before we voted on it. But ultimately, I think there are just a lot of good reasons to allow it. And really, I think one thing that resonated with some of the other commissioners is that it's an equity issue. If running a stop sign is no longer on a bike is no longer a crime, that's one less pretext for the cops to pull someone over, especially when bicyclists are statistically, lower income.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good to know. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I'm just keeping an eye out for any future legislation. Andrew is still, really helpful. He just couldn't be here tonight because it's budget week, but he'll be here next month. So yeah. And okay. So yeah, just moving on. One project I heard about that really interested me, that another ANC's transportation committee did. I think it was 6B down sort of in southern Capitol Hill, Navy Yard, that area. They did an intersection audit where they looked at every intersection in their ANC and figured out, what was wrong with it, what needed to be fixed. For example, a broken catch basin, or a parking sign that had been knocked over. What needed to be fixed and how it could be improved beyond that. Making a curb cut ADA compliant or something like that. I think that's a nice project we should think of, especially now the weather is getting a lot nicer today and yesterday notwithstanding. But that's just something to think about going forward. That might be a good project for July, like this summer, when the ANC, we just don't have as much activity going on. So there's more time to dedicate to the committees.
I like that idea. Is that an audit that we would undertake ourselves, or like we would request that of DDOT to do that audit?
That would be something we do ourselves. I cannot imagine. I mean, we can't even get DDOT to put in flex post on one intersection. I can't imagine this happening. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'd be happy to help with that audit. I think it was like, oh gosh, I think it was like 2 years ago. I reached out about like the big buttons. The council had voted for something like, they were like, oh, we're gonna really step up investment in like, especially like low cost and free, solutions that help with safety measures. I'm like, okay, we'll just remove all of the big buttons that are at the intersections. But yeah, there's a lot of little details that would be great to audit and reflect on.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I mean, that really just brings us to open discussion. Y'all have anything on your minds, any questions, anything you want to talk about?
I was curious if with the Bladensburg corridor, does that include 17th Street Northeast by chance, from like, I guess that's like Benning or Maryland up through that intersection with like Mount Olivet and Bladensburg?
So that is not part of the study. The scope is actually pretty limited. It's Bladensburg Road curb to curb. So, it's just the roadway of Bladensburg Road itself. Yeah. But I remember when Will presented about the 17th Street and 19th Street bike lanes a few months back, which right now stop at Benning Road, but I think they're planning in 2024 to put bike lanes on 17th there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think by then they also plan on doing the New York Avenue streetscape project, or whatever it's called. So then with New York Avenue and with 17th up to Mount Olivet, then I think it's 2025 they want to redo Mount Olivet.
Wow, that'll be a big undertaking. Wow.
Very much so. Yeah. But yeah, 17th, it looks like nothing's really going to happen in Carver Langston for a couple more years, unless we can convince the council to push funding for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess it is not surprising, but disappointing to hear that timetable, although it is almost halfway through 2022. But just thinking, as they're opening up some more of these projects, has there been any discussion about Arboretum access on M Street? I saw that a few months ago, I think in one of the ANC meetings, just that, as these projects happen, to give people a destination.
Yeah. Oh, and also I think I heard that they're installing bike lanes on Maryland Avenue all the way to M Street, where the Arboretum entrance will be. Which I think I heard the same thing, Cole, and I think it was in that context. The only thing stopping the Arboretum entrance right now is that the Department of Agriculture and DDOT do not get along. They historically have never gotten along. And it requires joint funding and joint teamwork, because DDOT owns the road and USDA owns the fence and the Arboretum itself. So, and work would need to be done on both sides to make the entrance happen. I know Eleanor Holmes Norton fully supports reopening the Arboretum. She's trying to make this work, but really it's DDOT is saying we're not going to fund it until USDA funds it. USDA says we're not going to fund it until DDOT funds it, and so we just need something to break the impasse. I don't know what that's going to take, but I mean, if anything, at this point, it's good just to be able to say that is the only issue. Both sides want it. Both sides want it, which itself is a huge thing. It's just neither wants to go first.
Got it.
Yeah. And DDOT has been open to opening it for a while. The USDA just finalized their master plan, their renewed master plan within the past year or so, which did call for reopening the entrance. So the stage is set. Now it's just a matter of breaking the impasse.
I'll take it. I
Yeah.
mean, eventually.
One of these days, one of these days. Yeah.
We don't have anything else.
Okay, cool. Carrie, anything else?
Nope, I'm all good. Thanks.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you both for joining. I think we'll just do the same time next month, which would be May 17th. So, you know, we'll see you all then. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, anything at all, always feel free to reach out to me.
Sounds great. Thank you,
All right.
Stephen.
Great. Thanks.
Have a good
Have a
night.
good night.